Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. In this video, we're just going to do the news. We're going to do the fan Q&A. Later in the week, we'll be doing review videos, things that I think the Dolphins need to replace, who I think won't be coming back for the 2021 season. Because it's going to take more than an hour to do all of that stuff. Because I think this game, more than any game, really, the personnel issues kind of caught up with the team a little bit in this game. The offense certainly suffered from it. The defense suffered from it. I think it wasn't just that. I think some of the game plan choices in this game were very poor. So that's what we're going to be discussing in today's video. Really just focusing on this game and what your questions are and some of the news that we have. And then I'm going to do some other videos that are just solely focused, not podcast videos, but solely focused on the future of the team, the potential acquisitions they can make, potential trades they can make, and some of the things that I think the Dolphins need to improve on and need to move on from. So let's get into the first news story. And really, we only have one news story, and it's the 2021 NFL Draft Order. It's the official order. So this is where the Dolphins will be picking. They will be picking third in the draft. Or they are only behind the New York Jets and Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a very interesting spot to be in because both of the teams ahead of them presume that they will take a quarterback there. So the Dolphins will get the best player of the draft that is a non-quarterback, or whatever they need to fit their needs. And obviously, I'm a huge fan of Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase. I think both of them could help this team out greatly and are needed badly, especially after watching this game. And then obviously at where you pick 18th, I think. Yeah, we pick 18th. I think you go offense there again. Maybe Najee Harris. Hopefully he'll fall that far. Maybe it'll be like a Josh Jacobs situation where he kind of falls a little bit into like either the late teens, early 20s situation. That would be nice. Maybe you take another receiving threat there like a Kyle Pitts if he falls that far. But I think the Dolphins, looking at the 2021 NFL Draft Order, should focus on offense. I don't think there is a dominant enough defensive player. Maybe the Penn State linebacker you could argue for, but most of them, in my opinion, are defensive backs that I think could be really good players, and there's only really two of them. I don't think it's the best defensive draft ever, and I might be just a little bit ignorant on that. I haven't looked at all of the players, but just at first glance, it doesn't look like there's a Chase Young in this draft. So, in saying that, I think the Dolphins, if they want to improve the pass rush, they can easily do that in free agency. There's a lot of really good pass rushers in free agency that I love, like Von Miller, Melvin Ingram, just to name a few. So that could be, I think, a potential. They could go that route. Obviously, Devin McCourty is going to be a free agent, I believe. So they could, if they want to do something about the safety position, or if they want to do something about the slot corner position, Patrick Peterson or J.C. Jackson are available if they're not happy with Igbenogany or Nick Needham. We'll see what they do there. So yeah, that's basically a quick overview of the draft, what they could do. If you're not a Tua fan, I would say, in my personal opinion, I guess you would pick Zach Wilson there from BYU. I'm not a huge fan of Justin Fields. I think Trevor Lawrence is by far the best quarterback in the draft. I really think Wilson is second from what I've seen so far. And I could change my mind. I could change my opinion on that. Like I said, I need to get into it a little bit more. I don't really like Trey Lance that much. So yeah, it's not, I don't know, the quarterback class isn't that deep either. So we'll see what happens. I think this is a great draft if you want a really good receiver, which is crazy because of last year's class. But those Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith are special. And we'll see what the Dolphins decide to do there. But yeah, that's really all I have to say right now. I'm very excited to do the especially the free agency videos and some of the what the Dolphins need to move on from. I think is going to be really interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit about that but I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive into that in its own separate video. So let's talk about this game because we have to talk about it, unfortunately. I'm not going to go through the box score. I'm just going to talk about the game. And hopefully it's not too jumbled and it's not too crazy because this was a very disappointing game. Unbelievably disappointing to the point of I really don't know what the heck was going on in this game. Like I said, I think this game pointed out a lot of the shortcomings of this team. And I think the two biggest ones are playmakers on offense and a pass rusher on defense. I think really hurt this team. And let's start with the defense. The defense of game plan in this game and some of the choices that the coaching staff made, I thought were very poor. A lot of zone, and once we started playing zone in that second quarter, which we played heavy zone in that second quarter, once they got into our red zone, we played a little bit more man coverage, but we played a lot of zone in that second quarter. They scored 28 points on us. You started to see some busted coverages, a lot of run after the catch opportunities. Brian Daboll did a great job of recognizing what the coverages were and attacking their weaknesses. This team has never been a very good zone team all year. The best zone game they played was against the 49ers. And maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars, you could argue. But this team's not, and it's ever since Bobby McCain has been the free safety, it's never been a good zone team. And they kind of abused that, and I think we kind of were scared of the speed that the Bills have and our lack of pass rush. And I think we didn't want to blitz them because the Bills have a great screen game. They have all year. So that's kind of a huge counter to some of our blitz packages. And they have a lot of, obviously, good players after the catch to catch those screens. So I think in a lot of speed. So I think that kind of deterred the Dolphins away from even doing that. And we've really seen a lot less of that later in the year. And especially against mobile quarterbacks. It seems that Brian Flores doesn't really want to do that against more mobile quarterbacks. But I think overall defensively, I didn't like the lack of aggression at times in this game, even though we really couldn't play man coverage in this game very well. And when we did play zone, the Bills had a pretty good game plan, and they adjusted very quickly to it. Because there was a couple drives there in the beginning where the Bills kind of struggled a little bit, and then they just adjusted to it in that first half, and they never looked back. But I think one of the things that it just is glaring is the pass rush. Every time we play the Bills, every single time we play the Bills, we make them look like they have the greatest offensive line in the history of the NFL. It is ridiculous. There was a couple times where we got pressure, but for the most part, we just really didn't disrupt anything. And like I said, I think some of the personnel issues on this team caught up to them. We need one more playmaker on this team. Or not this team, on this defense, excuse me. They need a pass rusher / linebacker. They just need one more. And I think that could bring this defense to another level. And especially to match up better with the Buffalo Bills. They just need one more playmaker on that side of the ball. And maybe they get two in free agency. Maybe they, because Nick Needham struggled. Nick Needham's speed was apparent in this game. I've never seen, they made him look slow. And that was clearly a game plan to attack Byron Jones and Nick Needham in this game. On double moves, and Nick couldn't keep up with the speed in the slot. And that has to improve. But I think the biggest thing in defensively is they need a pass rusher. And that is something that this defense really doesn't call for. But I think if we're going to beat the Bills in this division, you have to go out and get someone who is that guy. And whoever it is, hopefully we hit on it, because it's greatly needed. And like I said, if we're going to win the division, that has to change. That has to change. And they might need to get faster in the secondary. They might have to get faster in the secondary, whether that's J.C. Jackson, whether that's Patrick Peterson, whether that's Devin McCourty, who's a better off-the-ball safety than Bobby McCain is. And whatever they decide to do, I think that's something that they need to definitely look into. Maybe Igbenogany finally comes along in his development next year. We don't know. But I think speed was apparent as well in this game. Our corners just did not match up with their speed very well, especially in man coverage. But, like I said, I think the pass rusher was the biggest thing in this game, or just an extra playmaker on defense in this game, on the front seven, not in the secondary, is what I mean by playmaker. Because the Isaiah McKenzie touchdown, and I think it was the second one, where it was a broken play, not really a broken play, because Josh Allen really never left the pocket, but he got a ton of time. Isaiah McKenzie cuts back to the really middle of the end zone, and he was wide open. Nick Needham couldn't keep up with the speed. And, that's something that I wish this defense was better at. If you watch New England, and this is just a little sidebar here that I noticed. If you watch New England play defense, when they play man coverage, which they do almost all the time, anytime someone breaks the pocket, they get their hands on them every single time. So it's harder to kind of make cuts and break away from the receiver when they do that. And you don't really see that in this defense. And Nick Needham definitely didn't do that in this game. He never really got his hands on him when the play was dead, when the routes were stopped. And that kind of led to that touchdown. But again, if they had someone like a Von Miller or a Melvin Ingram, or someone who can affect the game on the front seven, it would help out this defense greatly. And not even in just this game. There's a lot of games when this team does the 3-man rush, a 4-man rush, it's not consistent enough. And that's something New England has always been very good at. When they rush through, when they rush forward, they still get home. That's partly because they're very creative with some of the stuff that they do up front, with stunts and stuff of that nature, how they slant their defensive line, how they prepare for how a quarterback likes to move in the pocket, stuff like that. But for this team and this defense, how we coach our defense, we need someone else who can make a play on the front seven. It hurt us in the Raiders game. Every time we rushed 3 or 4, it turned into a big play. We didn't match up well with that offensive line. That offensive line swallowed up our defensive line. And I like the 3-man rush. I like the 4-man rush. It's a staple of a lot of really good defenses in the league right now. I don't mind it at all. But when you don't have that guy who can get after a quarterback, or at least pressure a quarterback on a consistent basis, it turns into big plays like we've seen against the Raiders and the Buffalo Bills the last 2 weeks. And I think that's a huge glaring need that this team needs to address, especially with the way that they call defenses. And I know that this defense is not built that way. It's built from the secondary to the front seven. Well, you have your secondary. Add to the front seven. And I've pointed this out before, New England had Chandler Jones and Dante Hightower. Now, Dante Hightower plays a lot of middle linebacker in the course of his career. Yes, he does. But if you're a Dolphins fan, or if you're an AFC East fan, you know that he moves all over the place to the defensive line. He's a great pass rusher when they ask him to do that. I remember the year that a lot of Patriots fans wanted him to move to being a solo, just a pass rusher. But they always have had that guy in the front seven that's a playmaker. Okay? And that's something that this defense needs. Whether it was a Chandler Jones or Rob Ninkovich, Vince Wilfork. I'm blanking. Jabal Shearer that one year. He had a good year with New England. Dante Hightower. We need someone who can be special on the front seven. And Ogba's great. I love him. But we need another guy there to be more consistent. Shaq Lawson isn't consistent enough. Christian Wilkins isn't consistent enough. Zach Sealer is probably, I would say, definitely the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to interior pressure. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think some of the personnel issues caught up with this team. I did not like the lack of aggression in this game. I think we feared them a little bit too much in this game. On defense, I thought we could have been a little bit more aggressive with some of the stuff that we did, but other than that, I liked how I understood why the game was called the way it was, and we have to have better players in those positions for those defenses to be executed correctly. And that was very apparent in the Raiders game, and it was very apparent in this game. And hopefully that gets fixed. Who knows? Maybe Von Miller will don the Dolphins helmet. Melvin Ingram, whoever it is. Hopefully we can fix that situation. The Dolphins have the fourth most cap space in the league, I believe, or the fifth. They're definitely top 5. We'll see what Chris Greer and Brian Flores decide to do in free agency. There's a lot of interesting names out there, and we're definitely going to break that down. But like I said, I think, especially the last 2 weeks defensively, I think some of the stuff has caught up to them, and some of their shortcomings defensively. You can only mask certain things for so long, and when the Dolphins don't blitz, it's hard for them to get pressure. And they didn't blitz the Bills that much, and they didn't blitz the Raiders that much. And when they've done that, that's when you've seen a lot of the struggles defensively, and they need another playmaker on their front seven. Really, to put a bow on this whole defensive thing, to give up 56 points is nothing was working. And I think the theme of this game was letting up big plays, and like I said, I think they really don't fear anybody in our front seven. To do a lot of those shot plays. Like, it's an excessive amount of shot plays. It's an excessive amount. Like, that's got to be a record, at least for this season, of the amount of times that they called plays down the field. And I think they don't really feel, like I said, they don't fear anybody. They don't fear our front seven. If you feared our front seven, you wouldn't call plays like that. On a consistent basis. So we have to get better up front. We have to get one more guy that can attack the pass, the passer. And like I said, I think that was very apparent in the Bills game and the Raiders game. So let's move on from the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we could talk about how Nick Edom didn't play well and how Bobby McCain really didn't play all that well either. We can talk about how Eric Rowe continues to struggle with the ball in the air. We could talk about all of those things, but I think why the defense really struggles is what we kind of just talked about, and that's some of the things that they've really struggled with. And really, if they get someone who can affect the quarterback on a consistent basis, when they rush forward, when they rush through, when they play zone, they'll get better results. So let's move on to the offensive side of the football, which continues to be an eyesore, to say the least. One of the things that I've also noticed when we play the Bills, this Bills team with Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott are a heavy zone team. They're not very aggressive either. They don't blitz a lot. I think they blitzed a lot earlier in the year, but usually this defense doesn't really blitz that much. And maybe they are more because their offense is a little bit more high-powered. But every time we play them, they blitz heavy, and they play a lot of man coverage. They didn't even have Tre'Davious White in this game, and they play a lot of man coverage. We were able to take advantage of it sometimes with Devontae Parker, who kind of woke up in the second half, especially on that first drive. But for the most part, we really couldn't do anything against it. This team is not built well on offense, especially for Tua. And I know that Tua is getting a lot of hate. And I don't really think I should even talk about Tua. Yeah, Tua didn't have a great game. He's a rookie quarterback. This team is inefficiently built to begin with, okay, on the offensive side of the ball. Tua, I still believe in, and I still believe he's going to be a franchise quarterback. He needs people who can beat man coverage in the short passing game. He needs that, okay? He needs it. We don't have that on this field or on our team right now. I want you guys to take into consideration something. We traded Isaiah Ford to the worst receiving corps in the National Football League. He was cut by that team. I want everybody to take that in for a second. Okay? He was let go by the worst receiving positional group in the entire NFL. Okay? Listen, we've been through this with Ryan Tannehill. I had to sit here and I had to defend Tannehill since the channel was created, because the team was built like crap, for God's sakes. And you saw what he could do when he has a competent team around him. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Okay? This team isn't built. This team needs more help. It's not the quarterback. It's sole fault, for God's sakes. This offense, clearly needs more help on the skill. Like, I cannot believe people are going to sit here and talk about Tua being a bust when he's throwing to Isaiah Ford, Malcolm Perry, who, by the way, had the best route all year on that double move. Beautiful throw by Tua, but it's got to be it's a bottom 3 receiving core in the National Football League. And I've said I love Mike Gesicki, but he's the same guy as Devontae Parker for the most part. He's a down the field 50-50 ball guy who cannot win consistently over the middle or anything short. He's not Travis Kelce. He does not get in and out of his breaks smoothly enough or fast enough. He takes long strides. He's not a good route runner. I love Mike. I hope he comes back next year, and I'm sure he will. He's a good asset. He's a great red zone threat. He's a good down the field threat. He is not an all-around great receiving tight end. Okay? Devontae Parker, as much as I love him, is inconsistent. Okay? And I think that this year proved it, whether it be injuries or his play in general. And then after that, who are we talking about? I mean, Myles Gaskin is our third best receiver. Maybe the second best receiver on this team. Honest to God, on a good day. I don't understand what you got. Let's go back to the game for a second against the Bills. Okay? And just really against any team in the NFL. What does this offense struggle against? Man-heavy defenses. They struggle against the Patriots. They struggle against this team. This team always plays man coverage against us. Every single time. They didn't even have Tre'Davious White in this game, and we could not get off man coverage, okay? Josh Norman was winning way too much against Devontae Parker, who is a zone corner, primarily a zone corner. That's why they got him, because they're usually a primary zone defense. That's what Leslie Frazier has always been known for. That is what Sean McDermott came from with Ron Rivera in Carolina, okay? But when they play us, they play a lot of man coverage because we do not match up well with man defenses. Our speed doesn't scare anybody. Jakeem Grant is the speediest player we have, and he's a terrible receiver. I mean, I'm surprised. I'm sure everybody punched the wall with how many times Isaiah Ford and Myles Gaskin, even Devontae Parker, dropped passes in this game. I'm not even defending Tua. Okay? But I'm not even talking about Tua right now because he's a rookie quarterback. I'm talking about these players that we've had on this team for a good amount of time right now that aren't good enough. Jakeem Grant's been here a while. Isaiah Ford has been here a while. Mike Gesicki has been here for a while. Devontae Parker has been here for a while. Preston Williams, ladies and gentlemen, is not the answer. Between injuries and his inconsistent play, we've seen enough from him. This team needs better players on offense. That should be the focus of the offseason. That should be the focus of the draft. This offense has to be better. It is not good. They need skill positions. Okay? The personnel on this offense is not good enough. It's not. I love the tight end core. I think, Shaheen, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the mic. Smythe and Gesicki, you don't have to touch the tight ends. I don't think you need to touch the tight ends. I think Mike is a good enough vertical threat in the middle of the field. I don't think they need to touch the tight ends. But the receivers and I think you can add another running back. And they need to change the scheme. I believe. I don't think this. Let's get in. Okay, let's transition to O'Shea, not O'Shea. Chan Gailey. The thing I hate about Chan's defense, and I actually want to take back something I said in the Raiders podcast. We did attempt more down the field throws than I thought we did. We did in that game. So to kind of take back what I said, and I was wrong. But I think the thing that bothers me about Chan the most, I like what he does in the red zone. But the thing that bothers me about Chan the most is his personnel groupings, especially under center, are god-awful. Okay? It is the same formations every single game. Every single game, it's the same thing. Okay? And when Tua's in the game, it's empty. It's an RPO. It's a bootleg, and that's like 80% of the dang offense. Okay, we have to expand. We have to be more have more variety in our attack. We have to have a consistent running game because the run game the last 2 years has been awful. And I think something Chris Sims said something, and I love his podcast. It's a very good podcast if you guys haven't listened to it. But he said something very interesting where he was saying the reason the Steelers struggle at running the football is because, and this is something Sean Payton has talked about a lot, you have to kind of, if you want to run the football and you want to be a good running team, and lack of offseason and training camp and preseason kind of hurt us in that area, but you have to do it a lot. You have to do it a lot, and it starts in the training camp, it starts in preseason. You have to build that physicality with your offensive line, and I don't think this scheme really lends itself to that. My dream scheme for Tua would be the way that Sean Payton runs his offense. Run the football, play action, and a very good quick passing game, and get the running backs involved in the passing game as well. Have a lot of people like an Alvin Kamara, like a Michael Thomas, who are really good in the short passing game and can do stuff after the catch. I think that's the best. I think that's how Tua will succeed in the NFL. I think that's how he'll be one of those top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. You have to kind of build it that way, and I think that's what kind of scheme fits him the most. And it's just, we don't have the personnel to do that, and maybe that's why Chan is so limited in the stuff that he can do week in and week out. Because there is really no down-the-field threat on this team, unless you want to throw a 50-50 ball. And Chan has said repeatedly that he calls plays that fit his players. And like I said, I think Chan can get a pass too. There's not a lot to work with right now on the receiving core. And lack of running game. So those things need to be fixed in the offseason, whether they need to look at the offensive line. Maybe they need to get a little bit more physical there. Maybe they need to change approaches to the way that they call offense. Like I said, I think the way that, and I know Sean Payton's don't grow on trees, but I think that's the kind of a style of how you would build your team offensively for Tua to have the most success. But I think first and foremost, the most glaring thing is just the lack of talent offensively is bad. I mean, the skill positions need to be better. They need more playmakers on offense, and that's just where that ends. I mean, it's not a coincidence that Josh Allen has a breakout year where when they trade for Stephon Diggs, they draft Gabriel Davis, so and they get Zach Moss in the draft. They get John Brown in free agency 2 years ago. They get Cole Beasley in free agency. They built that team in support of Josh Allen. Those are all very good skill position players. They traded a first-round pick for Stephon Diggs, if I didn't mention that 2 seconds ago. So it's more than just the quarterback, and that's really, because you guys have probably heard a million times already by the time this podcast comes out of how bad Tua is. It's not Tua, okay? Tua had a bad game as a quarterback, but he's not. I think it's underratedly bad of how bad the skill positions are on this team, and we've talked about it all season long. Okay, especially the last 2 months of the year. Like, the offense is a problem. It is a problem. Preston Williams isn't as good as we thought he was. Devontae Parker is what he is. We know what he is. And that's not going to change. And a lot of these guys, Jakeem Grant, Isaiah Ford, we know what they are. They're not going to change. The only guy that I am happy to see his future in the league and am excited to see his growth is Lynn Bowden Jr. and Myles Gaskin. That's about it. Everybody else, like, people were bringing up, well, maybe the Dolphins should have put in Matt Breida. Have you seen Matt Breida run lately? But especially all year. He needs a good offensive line to run behind. He is not a playmaking running back at all. He would not have changed any point. The outcome of that game would not have changed if Matt Breida was in the game. So the Dolphins they have to build around Tua the right way. They have to go get him help. Go get the dude some help, for God's sakes. That's all I have to say. They have to go get him help. I'm sick and tired of watching Jakeem Grant, Isaiah Ford. I'm sick and tired of it. I don't want to see it anymore. This is how many years have they been had prominent roles on this team? Especially at least the last 2 years we've dealt with this. I'm sick and tired of it. I don't want to see it anymore. I'm done. They need good happy trails, okay? Happy trails. We're gonna move on. Let's get a real slot receiver, and that's something that we've talked about all season long. There is no slot receiver on this team. Lynn Bone Jr. has been a sort of a godsend because he's been the closest thing we've had to a slot receiver. Everyone else on this team, we don't have a slot receiver. We have most of the year until the last 3 games of the year. We didn't have a running game. By the way, we really didn't do much with the run game against the Bills, which is another whole rigmarole that we could go down. We didn't even try to establish the run in that game, which was weird. They were missing Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes, and we didn't try to establish the run game. Anyway, the point is I think we're all sick and tired of what we like. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Well, you know what would be insane if we went into this year again with those players. Now, granted, Brian Flores and Chris Gray didn't know COVID was going to happen, and then Alan Hearns and Albert Wilson weren't going to play. So I think they kind of were like, okay, well, this is what I guess we're going to have to deal. And I want to say this again. Isaiah Ford was traded to the New England Patriots and cut from the worst receiving corps in the National Football League. If that doesn't tell you what the heck is going on, but like, how do you people, and I don't want to, not you people, but Dolphins fans in general, I shouldn't say you people, but Dolphins fans in general, watch these games and are like, it's not the receiver core. Tua needs to throw the ball through people's chests. Dude, it's tough sledding every drive. Okay? Yes, Tua could play a little bit better. Yes, he could be a little bit more accurate in some of those throws and the decision making. He's a rookie quarterback. That's normal for a rookie quarterback. It is what it is. He's going to be way better in year 2 with an off season and hopefully better support. That's all I have to say, and I will stick by that. The point is, this is what I want to focus on. Is some of these receivers. They need to go. They've got to go. They've got to go. Happy trails. And like I said, we cannot go into this year with the same people. Albert Wilson and Alan Hearns, I don't want to see them again. I want to see new people in there. I want to see veterans. I want to see proven talent. I want to see playmaking. That's what I want to see on offense. I actually want to watch an offense, for God's sakes. I haven't seen one the last 2 months of the year, for God's sakes. There should be signs saying, get Tua help. Get us help. I'm sick and tired of watching this. I don't want to watch it anymore. It needs to change. And I'm sure they will change it. They're not blind. They see it. I don't know else what I can. I think that's it. I think the rant is over. There's not much else to say other than, yeah, Isaiah Ford, Jakeem Grant are not good players. And like I said, we broke down Mike and Devontae Parker and some of their shortcomings. And Preston Williams is not the answer. If Omar Kelly says one more time that he was giving Byron Jones the business by the way, Byron Jones was missing his entire left leg, for God's sakes, in this offseason. If I hear Omar Kelly say one more time that Preston Williams is the most talented receiver on this team, I might turn into a butterfly and fly away. Like, how does anybody watch the games, dude? I'm not saying Preston Williams is awful, but even he has his drop issues and consistency issues. We've seen that. I don't need to see any more of it. I've seen enough, okay? I have seen enough. I'm sick and tired of these players disappearing for 2 months. We need more consistent playmaking on this team. I've said enough. I don't need to say any more about it. But, dude, I don't think we could trust these beat writers. I honest to God, like, what are these beat writers seeing in practice, dude? Oh, my God, man. It just needs to change. It has to change. You know, in the rule book, it says you can run the ball. Okay, and the running game is a part of an offense. And at the very least, if you're going to be a pass-heavy team, we need more playmaking. We have to get more playmaking. We need people who can actually make people miss in the open field. I haven't seen that. Only one who does that on this team is Lynn Bowden. That's it. Everybody else is getting hip to hip, step to step, cement in their shoes. Literally everybody on this team has cement in their shoes and bricks for hands. Okay? I want everybody to know that right now. Cement in their shoes and bricks for hands. It has to change, dude. And like I said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. I swear to God, if we go into this season with the same personnel and expect a different outcome, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. They have to. Like I said, happy trails. I hope to God every pick is an offensive player. Free agency, I don't care what it is. I just want to watch a competent offense. Go get Tua some dang help. Go get him a slot receiver. Go get him someone on the outside who can do more than catch 50-50 balls and occasionally one on a slant. To be a little bit positive on this podcast. This has got to be the most negative podcast I've ever done. To be a little bit more positive, this team did win 10 games. To me, and I know, listen, this is an unpopular opinion. I don't really care. It's my opinion. I think Tua is going to have a very bright future. And I know that's not popular to say right now. I really don't care. You can call me anything you want. Biased or whatever the heck you guys want to say. I don't care. That's what I actually do believe. And I'm not saying that to be biased. I really do think Tua will be great. He just needs help. Like we just discussed with some of these people that he's throwing to, for God's sakes. But this team did win 10 games. This defense is good. Brian Flores is a great head coach. He still should get Coach of the Year, but he probably won't. After that game, he probably won't. But he deserves it. He's a great head coach. He's a great leader of the organization. And Chris Greer and him have done a great job of picking players. And I expect them to do the same. Do you think the jump from that year to this year and into the next year, you know, I'm very excited to see what that is. I'm very excited for the offseason. I'm very excited to do some of these videos because I do think they are going to be aggressive and helping Tua out with some of the stuff, some of the weapons that he needs. And like I said, the fans have to understand something. Josh Allen, he's in his third season, and again, like I said, it's not a coincidence. He got help. It's okay to get your quarterback help. It's okay. That's fine. It's fine. Every great quarterback in the league has a great player. Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams. Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. It's okay. I don't understand why can't we do that for Tua? Why can't we build that for Tua? And why is that a problem? Why is it always the quarterback's fault? We did the same thing with Tannehill. It's always the quarterback. It's the weirdest fan base when it comes to that kind of stuff. Every single time. Look at any of the top 10 teams in the league, which we are one of them this year. At least I would maybe a little bit outside of it, but I think, I think we could be most of the teams through 6 through 10. It's like I said, if you look at, and I've said this before, defending Tannehill, if you look at any great quarterback in the NFL, they have a great player next to him. Josh Allen has Stephon Diggs. Okay? We can just continue to, Russell Wilson has DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, for God's sakes. Like, can we get Tua, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett? Is that something we can we do that? Tannehill has Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. And a good offensive line. Hopefully we can do that for Tua. And I know we will. Chris Greer and Brian Flores will do that. God. Anyway. I'm excited for the offseason. I'm excited to see what this team does in the future. It's a very talented team. Even though I made it sound like it wasn't. Myles Gaskin has a bright future. Lynn Bowden Jr. has a bright future. Tua has a bright future. I think some of the players on the offensive line are going to be a lot better next year. We talk about Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, even Solomon Kindley. I think we need to do more of a power run scheme and stop pulling people and getting Solomon Kindley in space. I think that's a mistake. I think this team's more physically, when it comes to leaning on people and running downhill as opposed to, some of the edge stuff. So I think this team has a very bright future, but this team still needs things. And, I think that's very apparent in this game. and I think they will be fixed. So let's move on to the fan Q&A. I don't want to be negative because we did have a great year. The defense has a lot of talent on it. The offense has some talent on it. But obviously, they need more. They need help in a lot of areas there. So let's get into the fan Q&A. Mr. Frostbite says, we don't deserve to make the playoffs. Changed my mind. Well, I think the Dolphins fans deserve to make the playoffs. So, this next question comes from Stone. He says, do we draft the tackle from Oregon or Zach Wilson as insurance? I think you build around Tua, whatever that means. Do whatever they want. They think feels. I think this team desperately needs playmaking now. And if they could get the premium at playmaking in this draft, I think that would be the smart move. This next question comes from TR3MC. He says, Skaggs, it looks like we need to shore up our offensive line a lot more moving forward. And was the play calling too conservative again for such a must win? Again, I think one of the things that in this game, there wasn't a clear identity of this team. It was very balanced. I guess that's the identity of the team, according to Shane Gailey. I think the last few weeks, what you've seen what this team has been able to do is run the football a little bit more. I wish we would have kind of made more of an emphasis on that. Some of the early drives that stalled out, there was a drive that we called 2 screens in a row, and that's when I almost got up and left and never came back. But that kind of stuff, there needs to be more consistency of what we're trying to do to a defense, and there really wasn't any of that in this game. I don't really know what we were trying to do to the Bills' defense, to be honest with you. I don't know what weaknesses we were attacking. I don't know what the heck we were doing. So I would say more of an identity and more of a actual plan would have been interesting for this offense. This next question comes from M in Black. He says, Skaggs, after watching that game, what do we need in the draft? Quarterback, linebacker, offensive tackle, or just load up on offense? You need to build around Tua and load up and give him playmakers. He needs playmakers. Like I just gave you 50,000 examples of what happens when you give a quarterback playmakers. Give him someone to throw the ball to. Even Drew Brees had Michael Thomas, ladies and gentlemen. We need someone. We need more playmaking on offense. It's not good enough. This question comes from SM. He says, Skaggs, I remember the stories of Dan Marino in '83 when he had his first practice as a rookie. His confidence was on display. The veterans had no doubt that he was our leader. I don't see that with Tua. Are you worried about Tua's confidence level? Nope. I am not worried about Tua's confidence level. And the whole thing with Dan Marino, even Dan Marino had Clayton and Duper. And they were good for a good time. He had Tony Nathan. Dan is a good example of, I wish he would have gotten more help, but Dan Marino is a legit unicorn. We'll never see anything else like him again. He's really the only example in the history of the league where he really never had Hall of Fame level help or consistent All-Pro help there. If you look at all the other great quarterbacks in the history of the league, I mean, every single one of them had either a Hall of Fame receiver or something else on their team that was that level. When you think about John Elway, he had Shannon Sharp and Terrell Davis. You think about Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith, and Larry Allen. You think about Joe Montana with Jerry Rice and Roger Craig and some of the stuff that he had there. You think about Steve Young, who had T.O. and Jerry Rice for a short time. So you think about any Hall of Fame quarterback, they always had, even Bob Greasy had Paul Warfield, Roger Staubach had Drew Pearson. Terry Bradshaw had Lynn Swann and Stallworth. The list goes on and on and on. You need someone else beside you to build around your quarterback to be a successful offense, to be a successful team, and I think that's something that the Dolphins need to do. There is no Clayton and Duper on this team, I can tell you that right now. Or even Irving Fryer, for God's sakes. This next question comes from Beef. He says, hey, Skaggs, as much as the Dolphins have improved from last season, did you think Miami was going to the playoffs at all this year, be honest? I mean, I would say after like the Rams game, I had high hopes for it, but not at the start of the year. I even said before the year started that I think this team will be in a lot of close games and be a very competitive team, but I didn't think we would make the play. I didn't think it would be a 10-win team, and it was. So I think it was the season was a huge success, but there are still things that this team needs to work on. All right, hold on. I lost my place here. This next question comes from Jackpack18. He says, I feel good about the direction of the team for the first time in a long time, but I still don't think the defense is complete. Needs more edge and linebacker talent. I would agree that the front seven needs, like I said earlier in the video, it needs someone else there. It needs someone else who can make plays, who's a playmaker there, and hopefully they find that. This next question comes from D-Mac. He says, what is your take on Byron Jones? He's getting paid like a top corner, and he gets outplayed weekly. Well, the last 2 weeks he's been getting out, I would say, I guess you could say outplayed, but other than that, he's been pretty good. Even some of his worst plays where when the game was kind of already getting out of hand, you could kind of feel it slip away. One of the things that I didn't like about this game is the energy level on offense was awful. Like, it was, Tua said something interesting where he was like, the communication was off in this game, and I actually wanted to throw something at the screen because, first of all, there's no fans, so that shouldn't happen ever. And that, to me, lack of preparation is a kind of a problem there when it comes to the offense side of the ball. I just didn't feel like the energy was there. It didn't feel... the only one who looked like they had any energy was Myles Gaskin. This next question comes from KC. He says, in the draft, do you believe in the best player available approach? I think the best player will be... I think that is the best way. Okay, my bad. Let me redo this question. He says, this question comes from KC. He says, in the draft, do you believe in the best player available approach? Yes, I do. I think that is the best way. I agree with it. Depending on where you're at as a team, if you have a good team, to me, that's always the best thing to do. And really, in general, I think that's the best thing to do. In my opinion, Devontae Smith and Jamar Chase are like two of the top 5 players in this draft, at least from what I've seen so far. So I think that fits the need and the best player available approach. And he says, will you be making a podcast in the offseason? I hope KC knocks off the Bills. Well, yeah, I always make a podcast in the offseason. I always do. Until the season starts again. Every single week you'll get one. This next question comes from Last World Productions. He says, is it safe to say Gailey is gone after this? And by the way, I have a podcast myself. I would love to collaborate one day. I would also. That would be fun. Is it safe to say Gailey is gone? I think probably. I can't see him coming back. I think it's time to move on. This next question comes from SM. He says, in your estimation, did the defense give up in the second half after carrying the team all season? I think they didn't give up, but there was the lack of... you know what? I won't even say that. I think this defense had a lot of intensity from most of that second half. I'm not even lying. I think the offense is the one that didn't have the energy. Sorry if you hear my dog in the back. This next question comes from SM. He says, Mr. Skaggs, everyone is down on the O-line. Most drafts have the Fins taking an offensive tackle with the 3rd pick in the draft. My question is, who would this rookie offensive tackle replace, Jackson or Hunt? Would it be smart move to trade down, collect the King's ransom trade down in the teens and grab a wide receiver and stockpile for 2022? You're not going to... Those receivers will be taken in the top 10. Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith will not be there after the top 10. I promise that. So you have to, I think you just stay there and take one, or maybe you trade a little bit lower in the 10s. This next question comes from Eric. He says, who do you think we get rid of, and who do you think we bring in this offseason? I'm not really sure. I think there's a couple names that I think are gone. Most of the receiving core I don't think is coming back. What else? Defensively, there really isn't anyone that I think is going to be gone. I mean, maybe Bobby McCain. But I don't know. I could see him coming back as well. I really got to break that down and look at the roster. This question comes from Jack Pack. He says, I would like to see them bring in another quarterback via the draft or free agency to challenge Tua. Not saying I don't believe in Tua, but competition will only make him better. And they need a long-term answer at backup quarterback because Fitz is old. Um, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the back quarterback position is very important. I don't think Fitz is leaving after this season, though. We'll see, but I don't know. I don't think he is. This next question comes from Last World. He says, after the loss, Buffalo is now 0-4 against McDermott. Now, I know it's a small sample size, but this season is a concern moving forward, ultimately considering the fact both teams are trending upward in the near future. I think we broke down earlier in the video what this team needs to do to kind of play them, match up with them a little bit better. This next question comes from SM. He says, almost poetic justice after the Dolphins lose to Buffalo. Everyone is sitting around wishing for Colts to lose. And the player Miami passed on in the draft, Jonathan Taylor, runs for 253 yards, ending Miami's season. I don't know if that's poetic justice. It kind of hurt a little bit. This next question comes from Tyler. He says, how would you feel if we keep Devontae Parker, sign Juju Smith or Kenny Golladay, and then draft Jamar Chase and Najee Harris? I think we would have the potential to be great on both sides of the ball next year and many years to come. You know what? If that was the offseason, I would be okay with it. I think Kenny Golladay is pretty much the same player as Devontae Parker and what he does really well. So I think you got to get a slot receiver in there. So I think Juju would be, I guess, your slot receiver. So I don't know if you necessarily need Kenny Golladay, though, because Jamar Chase is more of an outside receiver as well. So it's a little bit redundant, but I do like the idea of just getting a lot of playmakers. This next question comes from Beef. He says, Skaggs, he says, let's get personal for a moment. If you're Tua, how personal and fired up would you take this big loss? Miss the playoffs and the evisceration of cynical Dolphins going into next season. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely going to remember this loss and what fans said about Tua and this team. Listen, who cares about that? I literally can give you evidence. Like, you need other people around your quarterback. I don't want to go, like I said, we didn't ever do that with Tannehill. We stuck with a lot of players too long. Adam Gase's approach to building a team was always dumb, where he was like, I don't really want to invest in the offensive line, or in the interior of the offensive line is what he said. That was stupid, okay? And it just, trading players away just because you have grudges with them, all that kind of stuff was dumb. So Tannehill never really got a fair shake, especially with all the regimes and GMs that were in and out of the organization in a short amount of time. You have to build around your quarterback. And hopefully the Dolphins do that in this offseason. This question comes from Richard. He says, Chan's got to go. You can't win running all your plays out of play action. And yeah, and by the way, with the play action stuff, which we didn't do a ton of in this game, but if you got to set up the run game to have successful play action, by the way, especially with these bootlegs, Chan Gailey. Passing the ball 8 yards, not making the playoffs is a good thing. Dolphins will get better draft position with their number 1 pick. I don't think that's a good... I would love to have played... If we beat the Bills, we would be playing the Titans in the first round. That would have been awesome. So I wouldn't go that far. I don't really care if the pick is 18 or 23. I don't think that's a big of a difference. But, yeah, I still think it hurts a lot that we didn't make the playoffs, Richard, if I'm being real with you. This next question comes from SM. He says, which players in the secondary are gone next season? I think the only one that is potentially gone, there's 2. I think Nick Needham and I think Bobby McCain. And the reason I say Nick Needham is because, okay, not only is Noah Igbenogany still on the roster, who could also progress into something, but Stephon Gilmore is going to be out there. Patrick Peterson is going to be out there, and J.C. Jackson. And we know how much this front office values their secondary, and I know they have a lot invested in it already, but if they could decide to go that route, I think they need to, if they're going to spend a lot of money in free agency, they need to do it with an outside rusher. When it comes to the defensive side of the ball, I don't know what this team is going to do when it comes to that, but if, like you said, what the question is from SM, which players in the secondary are gone next season, I think that depends if they can replace them with better people. Like, if depending on how confident they are in Igbenogany and Needham, and and obviously Patrick Peterson came out and said he would be willing to play free safety, and that he's a perfect fit for this defense, because the free safety is in man coverage a lot. So we'll see, but I would say the 2 guys in the secondary that could be gone would be Nick Needham and Bobby McCain. Everyone else I think is pretty much untouchable. This next question comes from Ethan. He says, should we keep Chan? I think he's an average, and I want good or great, not mediocre. I think I do want to give Chan some slack because I think we again underestimate how bad the offensive skill positions are, and yeah, that's all I will say about that. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what the Dolphins do when it comes to that. This next question comes from Tech Me Out. He says, I know Chan will take a lot of heat for the first half play selection, but I think he was trying to protect Tua from himself as it was evident in the second half. While I wanted Tua in last year's draft, I have to say he's looked awful and so far does not pass the ball. So the so-called eye test have to give it a 1 more year, though. I want to see what Tua can do with a true number 1 and an off-season under his belt. That being said, at this point, we can't label him the answer yet. He needs more than just a number 1. He needs a lot more than that on this offense. He needs an entire new set. At least 2 more receivers, I think. They have to add at least 2 receivers. They have to. And they need a slot receiver. This next question comes from Frostbite. He says, and they need more speed on the offense, too. Jakeem Grant is not a good receiver. This next question comes from Frostbite. He says, also, after watching that game, do you still like Nick Needham? I still do like Nick Needham. He had 1 bad game. For the most part, he's been pretty good. It's clear that he doesn't match up with their speed very well, though. And that's... We'll see what the Dolphins decide to do with that. J.C. Jackson is a perfect slot corner. We'll see what they decide to do, though. This question comes from Jared. He said, okay, that's a joke. Charlie said, this question comes from Charlie. He says, what should the Dolphins do with the 3rd and 18th overall pick? I think we discussed that a little bit earlier. This question comes from D-Mac. He says, do you think the RPOs have to go? Yeah. Not as much as we run them. You can sprinkle them in here and there, but not all the time. This next question comes from SM. He says, if the Dolphins lose Fitzpatrick to free agency or retirement, would you be opposed to drafting Zach Wilson and letting him be Tua's backup? We'll see what the organization decides to do. I trust whatever they do. I trust in them, but I do think that this team needs playmaking, and I do think Tua is the answer. So I don't know if you would use the 3rd overall pick on that. In my opinion, I don't think that's the way to go. This next question comes from Julian. He says, Tua actually played a great game. Unlucky slips, tips from these receivers, and Chan are what held him back. I would disagree with that. I think it was, yes, it's a combination of how bad there's very little skill help. A lot of drops in this game. But there were some inaccurate throws in this game. I don't think there was a lot of bad decisions, though. There's 2 plays where I was like, why didn't he just take off? And you've seen that a little bit over the last few weeks. Ever since he was injured in Denver, he's been a little bit hesitant to kind of scramble around a little bit. New England, he did it a lot. But in this game, I thought there were some lanes there that he just didn't take advantage of. But other than that, I thought the decision-making was... I don't think he really left anything on the field. All of the throws that went accurate, and some of those ones that were high over the middle, those were tight coverage. It was tight coverage. It wasn't a great throw. But it wasn't like, oh my god, I cannot. But like, he never missed anything in terms of decision making. But some of those throws, I'm sure he would like to have back. It is what it is. There was some miscommunication on some of those throws. That was obviously an issue. That's something that the entire team talked about after this game, which is crazy because there's no fans. But it is what it is. I think we broke down 2 huge issues with this team when it comes to the front 7. And they need playmaking. They just need it. They need it bad. Well, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. It was a great year. We're going to do a year in review. We're going to do focusing just on the offseason very soon. So hopefully those videos will be a little bit more positive. But it's hard to be positive when you lose 53 or 56 to 26, I believe what the final score was. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed. We still had a great year. Still a lot to look forward to. Very exciting offseason. And I will see you guys in the next one.